So I had questions about the last video about simple and complex carbohydrates. So I thought I'd give a breakdown about what those are and what's the difference. Carbohydrates are part of the three main macronutrients of your diet. You need carbohydrates, you need proteins, and you need fat. Yes, you do in fact need fat in a healthy diet. There's two main types of carbohydrates. There's simple and complex. The two most common building blocks of carbohydrates are glucose and fructose. Glucose is a 6-carbon ring. I'll show you a picture of it right here. And fructose is a 5-carbon ring right here. When glucose and fructose in particular are brought together, that forms sucrose, or common table sugar. So sometimes in ingredients lists you see something called dextrose. That's just another name for glucose. So it's the same thing. Simple carbohydrates are any carbohydrate that's formed of these sugar rings, these glucose, fructose, and there's a few other, up to 2 molecules. So 1 or 2 molecules is a simple carbohydrate. Anything more than that becomes a complex carbohydrate. Common simple carbohydrates on ingredients lists are things like raw sugar, concentrated fruit juice, sucrose, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup, or regular corn syrup. As I said before, complex carbohydrates are anything with more than 2 of these carbon rings. Typically they're linked in a chain. Complex carbohydrates can be broken down into 2 further subcategories: starches and 2 fiber. Now this is a bit of a simplification, but this is where we're working from right now. Starches and fiber mostly contain glucose. However, the difference between the two of them is how they're linked together. Starches is a simple bond, fiber is a complex bond and harder to break down. Starches can be broken down into their simple glucose molecules, whereas fibers, since they can't be broken down, they typically stay in your gut and they help aid digestion by retaining some moisture and by helping things flush through. Fiber also helps with your digestion by aiding a sense of satiety, which is your sense of fullness. You know, I'm full, I don't want to eat anymore. So the reason that complex carbohydrates are better for you than simple carbohydrates is just a matter of the fact that they're bigger, more complex, they're harder to break down. It takes longer for it to hit your bloodstream and spike your blood sugar. So the takeaway message about carbohydrates is the more refined and processed it is, the more likely it is to be simple and quickly affect your bloodstream. For example, apple juice would be considered a simple carbohydrate, whereas the whole apple would be more of a complex carbohydrate. That's not to say that things like apples can't have simple carbohydrates as well, but they typically have more complex carbohydrates and other elements like fiber that slow down the digestion of the simple carbohydrates. So another readily available way to assess whether something is a simple or a complex carbohydrate is to look at its glycemic index. There's lots of resources on the internet and apps that you can download that help you determine these things. So glycemic index is basically a scoring of the food on a scale of 0 to 100. The higher the number is, the more quickly it affects your bloodstream. So a low GI food would be something 0 to 55. A medium GI food would be somewhere from 56 to 69. High glycemic index food would be somewhere from 70 and up. Sugar, or pure glucose, is 100, and 0 is obviously no glucose. This isn't a perfect system because things like carrots and watermelon, for example, have high glycemic index. However, due to their relative small amount of glucose in the whole thing, they actually don't affect your blood sugar in the same way a high glycemic index food normally would. However, as a rule of thumb, it works pretty good. I hope you enjoyed this bit of information. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or shoot me an email or give us a call here at the office, and we'd love to answer your questions. Have a good one.